Today we're making Creole seafood gumbo, a classic stew with deep roots and bold flavors. We start with the seafood stock. In our pot, I've melted some lard, but you can use any neutral oil. The heads and shells of our prawns, they go in. The deep, briny flavors and the signature red-orange color are fat-soluble, so you need this step to get the most out of your stock. Once you can smell the ocean, we add some onion trimmings for some subtle sweetness, or an onion, celery for some subtle herbal note, and some crushed garlic for some savory depth. Give it a good mix to melt flavors and evaporate some of the surface moisture. Now, water goes in to take on the water-soluble flavors, namely the umami, the salinity, and the sweetness. Many of the flavors we just talked about are quite heat-sensitive and best preserved with brief cooking, closer to the 5-minute mark. But with a dish as flavoursome as this one, we're not just looking for those delicate flavors. We want the depth, the fat, and body. That's why we've not trimmed the head. Bring this to a boil, let it simmer for 30 to 45 minutes while we make our roux. Medium heat, we once again melt some lard, but you can use any high smoke point neutral oil. For a dark roux, I like to go for 1.1 to 1 ratio, with a bit more fat, just to make the mixing more fluid. Flour goes in. First, for the fat to coat the flour, and in turn coating each starch granule of the flour, preventing clumping later. Second, and more importantly, we start to cook the flour. In the past, I've mistakenly said that you do this as fast or as slow as you like. Watching old footages, I was doing them on average 6 to 8 minutes. I was wrong. Yes, I got the roasted notes. I got the smoky aromas, but we're dealing with something that's on average 12% protein here. And for that, you want gradual, even Maillard reaction to give you the complex, nutty, biscuity, and layered roasted notes. Think about onions. You could flash fry them, you could slowly caramelize them. They will look similar, but taste completely different. So take your time. Even if you're experienced, give it at least 20 minutes. First, you'll still be able to smell the raw flour. Now it smells toasty, and you have a blonde roux. Now it's nutty. You're starting to get a brown roux, and this is where we cross the Atlantic, aiming for something between a red brick and 7% dark chocolate. Once you have the brick, but before you get to dark chocolate, stove off, and you let the residual heat from your heavy bottom pan to take you there, reducing the risk of this burning. Once you can smell the richness and just before the smoky notes take over, the Louisiana Holy Trinity goes in, which you should prep before you start your roux. This would immediately cool down the pan. Evolved from the French mirepoix, we have the onion, which provides the savory base and subtle sweetness. Once again, the celery for the herbal note, and replacing the carrot, something that was less available in warm, wet climate, we have the green bell pepper. When cooked for a long period, it becomes earthy, smoky, and sweet, the perfect combo with the dark roux. And through heat, we soften our Holy Trinity, evaporating their water content to concentrate their flavors and to absorb the toasty, smoky note from our dark roux. Once everything's translucent, we crush some garlic, savory depth, and later caramelized sweetness. And we're adding the garlic later because they burn in the dark roux. Slight deviation from the traditional recipe, dry bay leaves, they go in now to activate their fat-soluble flavors, namely the subtle clove-like, eucalyptus-like notes. Small step, huge difference. We continue to build flavors, dried thyme for some gradual release of earthiness, and dry pantry herbs were very common in Creole kitchens. Smoked paprika for some subtle smokiness and gentle warmth, cayenne pepper for some clean and direct heat, and now the Creole special, chopped or tinned tomato for acidity and umami. And tomato appeared in one of the earliest gumbo recipes, which brings us to the okra, the first and for a long period the only thickener and its namesake derived from a West African language, and we add it before the stock. A, to round the grassy notes and bring out the sweetness and nuttiness through evaporation. B, and more importantly, to control the sliminess by coating it in fat, just like in a risotto where you toast the grains to coat them in fat to modulate the starch release. Here, we're modulating the gel release. So instead of in-your-face slime, we're getting elegant gel. This is of vital importance because the dark roux, through long stirring and later slow cooking, provides at most viscosity. The starch has mostly broken down and it's mainly there for the bold flavors. The okra, just like in 1824, it's what's going to give us the signature thickness. Now we're ready for our seafood stock. Bit by bit at first, so that whatever starch that remained and yet to be gelatinized will swell, giving us the viscosity we just talked about. Once you're confident there'll be no lump, everything in. Now we simply bring this back to a boil and let it simmer uncovered for about 30 minutes for this to further thicken and to have better control to not overcook the okra. After 30 minutes, we're ready. Now, for seafood gumbo, I always prefer using just enough liquid to cover whatever seafood that you plan to have. Then repeat. This way, you don't risk overcooking or having to reheat your seafood. Got some prawns. Liquid. We have some dressed crab, just to warm through. I like a bit of the brown meat as well. And at the very last minute, we lower the heat to add some oysters. Liqueur first, so we could gauge how much salt we need for the dish, and this would bring us some briny salinity to balance the richness of the roux. Ooh. Taste, touch more salt, generous amount of black pepper, and drop in our oysters just to warm through. I'm using shellfish from the traditional recipe just for the purpose of demonstration, but follow the spirit of the recipe, not the written words. Use whatever is seasonal, fresh, and affordable. Burn a few roux, cook it, and see if you like it. This is gumbo.